Julius, can we start with the next session?
Yeah.
We got it. Sumant, over to you. Your team is here for the presentation. They can join for the Q&A. You can start with the presentation. The timer would start now.
Sure.
Wish you the
Thank you
best.
so much. Um, I'm here representing Trust Armor, which is our horizontal fraud product line that we're building at Perfios. Essentially, the genesis of this idea is the fact that today, if you look at any kind of documentation proof, whether it is identity or bank statement, etc., it has heavily been indexed on the fact that what we get is by far authentic, right? So we're challenging that, and we're saying that in a digital world, we need to first relook at what we are calling as hard identity proofs. And there's two aspects to this solution: one which is catering to identity, one which is catering to the bank statement itself. Let me kind of dive in and take you through that, right? Just as a point of context, as per the RBI, banks have lost 1.3 trillion rupees to frauds in 2022 and 2023 alone. It's a huge number, significant in pretty much every way that you could possibly look at it. And that's kind of the genesis of where we started looking at fraud as a space. So like I was saying, right, today, most banks take a bunch of identity documents and a bunch of validation in a bunch of income proofs in the form of bank account statements. Our solution cuts across both these types of documents. Our solution also looks at the entire customer life cycle, which is at the point of origination and post origination during engagement, right? The essential idea is, how can I take my clients who are banks, NBFCs, and fintechs, and how can I help them protect themselves from fraud across the entire life cycle? Today, if identity document is provided, we validate it very quickly through a digital process and kind of move on, right? The challenge is, when you look at an identity document today, it can be built as a synthetic identity bottom up, especially now given elections are on the anvil. There are voter IDs that are getting issued in significant numbers or have been getting issued in significant numbers over the last few months. And therefore, it creates a very easy opportunity for someone who's a fraudster to build an entire synthetic identity. We've actually had recent examples where fraud has been committed by creating Aadhaar cards for homeless people, and those Aadhaars are linked to the fraudster's mobile number, and then a loan is taken, and then essentially the person disappears, right? Now, what are the components of our solution? We have four broad areas. The first is a digital footprint, where we essentially use the person's individual digital footprint online for us to be able to establish with confidence that they are who they are, right? The second is device fingerprinting, which is really post onboarding, when as an engagement protection area. The third is behavior assessment, where based on their engagement with the application form, we are able to establish whether or not the individual is keying in their own information or somebody else's information. The last is where we are looking at tamper document detection. Right now, it's specifically for bank accounts, but we intend to extend this as well to identity documents itself, right? So I'll start with the first solution, which is essentially for us to do a digital footprint. We use a bunch of triangulation mechanisms to be able to identify whether the individual is who they say they are, and we use this with minimum information. The idea is, this is top of the funnel. Given just a mobile number and or an email ID and an IP address, we are able to validate with high level of accuracy that this individual has a certain digital footprint, and based on that footprint, we are able to confirm whether or not they are authentic or not, right? Essentially, it's a combination of their mobile connectivity, what kind of, say, e-commerce, social media, apps, etc., that they are present on, whether or not they have a UPI associated with that number, as well as for for email and IP, we are able to validate whether that IP is using a Tor, or there is or it's an IP from an ISP who's compromised in general. And for email, we are able to identify A, the email age, B, whether it has participated in or has been found to be present in a previous fraud, and that we get predominantly through a global consortium. The second one is for device fingerprinting. Essentially, given a device, we are able to monitor over time the way where the customer uses the device from. Essentially, that's a combination of IP as well as GPS location. Secondly, the frequency and history of usage. Is the device itself compromised? Is it a rooted device, or is it a device that is compromised in some other manner or form? Third, how are they accessing? Is it predominantly through a mobile network? Is it through a Wi-Fi network, etc.? And one of the things that we've built is an in-house repository to validate whether a particular device, based on the information we're getting from the device, is the hardware actually correlated to what the device has been built with. The last one helps us block out emulators to a significant extent, and we're also able to use this as a mechanism to authenticate whether the hardware device itself is authentic. The third component that I'd like to talk about is about how the customer is engaging with the application form itself. Essentially, if you think about it, there is a short-term, medium-term, and a long-term memory. Pieces of information which you're very, very comfortable with are easily accessible out of the short-term memory. Things that are a little bit more, which are not daily recall, for instance, your Aadhaar may not be a daily recall item, will either sit in your long-term or medium-term memory. And for that, you may need a prompt where, say, you're toggling between two screens, or the type speed is a little bit slower, right? Whereas something like your name, if you're typing out your name, that information is very integral to you. So therefore, the type speed there will be different, right? We are also monitoring, for instance, how many backspaces you use. What is your delete behavior for a given attribute versus a different attribute? So based on the interaction with the application form, we are able to identify whether the individual is a bot or a human. B, if they're assuming they are human, right? Are they entering information that is their own information, or are they entering information that is information about somebody else? And a combination of these items enables us to give a risk flag out based on the behavior that we're seeing. The way this has been built, this can actually be used in multiple types of journeys, whether it is insurance, whether it is lending. In fact, even a payment gateway can potentially use this based on how the person is keying in the credit card information or the debit card information, etc. These are some of the frauds that we can help with. Essentially, a combination of the three items that we've presented earlier will allow us to be able to protect our clients against these types of frauds. I talked about synthetic identity. Mule accounts will be something that the device fingerprinting solution can help identify, where if the same physical device is being used across multiple accounts, for instance, right? Let me quickly hand over to Vijil, who will present this slide. Vijil, I'll go on mute if you can pick this up.
Vijil, it's 1 minute left for you.
Thank you, Sumant. So basically what FCU does, or the fraud check utility does, is whenever a customer gives a document, let's say, uh, excuse me, some notification. Okay, let's say a bank statement or a pay slip. What FCU does is it checks this document for any kind of tampering. So one of the tampering that it checks for is whether the PDF has been edited using any of the free editing software that's readily available on the web. The another thing that FCU checks for is transactions. It actually goes through all the transactions within the specific document to see if there was a manipulation of transaction itself. One example of this manipulation is when somebody does a circular transaction. They transfer money from another account to our account, and basically then show a higher salary on their account in order to get access to the higher loan amount. So that's what FCU does, and it instantly identifies both this tampering and a suspicious transaction and flags it to the customer. That's about it. Over to you, Sumant.
Sure. I'll just add a couple of more points. Essentially, what we also check for is For instance, consistency of the font that is used, consistency about where specific pieces of information are located on the bank statement. And this comes from our learning of seeing bank statement across a larger scope, larger volume. This is pretty much all we had to present. We're happy to take questions.
Okay, we start with the Q&A then. The time is up for the presentation. Thank you for closing it, Juno. And
Wonderful presentation. Now let us start from one single use case. Let's example synthetic identity, which is a
Sure.
problem. Okay, how you're solving, if you can really walk us through some practical demo or some case study which you have done with your client.
Sure. Manav, you want to take that?
Sure.
Very briefly.
Yeah. So essentially with frauds that we have seen in terms of identity theft or synthetic identity per se, what we have seen is that these frauds have become very rampant for one reason, that being that today
Oh, don't
KYC
give the background. So
Hmm.
Manav, we are aware about the background. Talk about the solution. If you have a presentation,
Understood.
some demo, you can show or what deep learning methods or what you're using. That is we are interested in.
Understood. In terms of synthetic identity can be captured across all major three components. For example, with the first one, there's the digital footprint. Whenever someone uses a synthetic identity, the more or less the attempt is to hide their true identity. So the digital footprint over the internet is going to be either non-existent or something peculiar, because the intent is that basis the phone number itself or the email itself, the law enforcement agency should not be able to track back who my real identity is as a fraudulent person. So
No, so the
building
digital trace is there. Let's example, I put my photograph over your Aadhaar card, right? And all your bank statements and everywhere.
Understood.
So digital footprints are there. Manav digital footprints are there.
Oh.
How you track that?
So in terms of digital footprint, we are actually looking at the digital presence of that particular phone number or email address across the internet. So essentially is against this particular phone number, any Facebook number exists, any Twitter number exists, there's a Instagram account, Amazon account, Flipkart account, any
How you find out that?
essentially we are pulling this information in real time over different platforms.
No, but phone number you can really track from Facebook.
So
if Facebook
Bhupesh,
is
let me
passing
answer
the
that.
API or Amazon is passing the API to you.
Yeah, so Bhupesh, let me please answer that. Essentially, what we're doing is we're trying to establish whether an individual has an account on that platform. So we use a crawling mechanism to establish that information. So we are able to ascertain whether or not that mobile is registered on Facebook, for instance, right? Is it registered with, say, an Amazon, a Flipkart, with a Meesho?
But Suman, that will be on the second phase. First phase, my question is, like, for example, if I forge my image, how you identify?
Sure. So we have a tamper check that we have built, which essentially says which area of a given identity card has been tampered with, right? And basis that, we are able to ascertain that, let's say, the photograph has been tampered with. The photograph is the area that is tampered. Now, there are situations we've seen where the original information, even on the Aadhaar side, has been changed basis collusion, right? So as part of that, we have a Aadhaar API that we offer, which shows which was the last change update.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Thank you. For other jury members.
Would you like to go second for the question? Or any other juror would like to go for the question if they have ready? Pranav sir, Tarun sir, would you like to go for your question?
No, I'm good.
Sir?
Incidentally, some of our portfolio companies have used your other products. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Very good.
Sorry, Pranav, you're not very audible clearly. Could you please repeat what you said?
1 second.
I'm not sure if it's only for me or for the others as well.
No, so we are not able to hear you clearly.
Is it better now?
Not particularly.
It's not clear,
Marginal.
sir, but if you could be loud, I guess that would help.
Now it's completely gone.
So the audio is off, sir. Would you like to enter your question if you are able to hear us? Just give us a thumbs up if you are able to hear us. Yeah, okay.
seconds.
Sure. In the meantime, I would request, ma'am, if you have any questions, you can ask the question. We have stopped the timer at 5. Can continue now, the timer. And ma'am, your question.
Yeah, okay. I don't have a question in particular, but I just want to know in terms of in some time in terms of user privacy or something, given the
Sure.
access that you have now,
Sure.
in terms of even how many strokes we do or how we delete or so,
Sure.
will there be any privacy left at all for any user, for the genuine
Yeah,
user?
absolutely, absolutely. So we're very conscious about what we do and how we do it. So the way we are working essentially on any of these things, like a keystroke, etc., is we don't have any PII information at all. I just know the behavior pattern that is being displayed on that device. I don't know if it is, for instance, a Vigil or an Abhishek using the device. I don't know gender, I don't know age, I don't know anything about the individual. To me, they are completely anonymous, right? I just look at the behavior pattern, and that behavior pattern I match with a larger group where I have established whether there is a person who's acting in a non-standardized manner, and basis which we then flag saying this is standard, this is non-standard, right? Essentially, if you think about it, we're just saying that based on how you are interacting, we can assess whether that information that you are putting in is yours or not yours based on how comfortable you are with the information, right? For instance, your name, you will type it at a certain speed, but if it autofills, for instance, then I know this is a name that is stored on the on say Chrome or whatever your browser is. Therefore, it is used frequently. Therefore, it's a high confidence green flag.
Okay.
I hope I was able to answer and assuage it.
Yes.
I'll add one point over here. So essentially in behavior analysis, there are two things. So with the fraudulent rings that we see, these people are creating identities at mass and trying to attack the systems, right? So there are two things. One is that one pattern that we know is that these people are not aware of the data that they are putting into the journeys because it's eitherly synthetically created data or it is an acquired data from whatever is their techniques, be it a data leak, be it a data breach, so on and so forth. And the second is that because they are applying on the same onboarding journey again and again, they are very much familiar with the onboarding page itself. So the nuances on the wait time that you spend on certain data points tell us whether are you typing before you are reading it or are you typing after you are reading it, which shows a level of familiarity with the application on top of level of familiarity with the data. So the overall high level thesis is that if you are very much familiar with data, you are putting in your data, so that's a good sign. But if you're not familiar with the application, that is again a good sign, because if you're in the onboarding journey or the sign up journey, you should have seen either sign up journey once or twice in the customer facing journey. So if you're showing high familiarity with the application, you know what is the next data point you want to enter. That is indicative of someone being fraudulent in nature who has seen the onboarding journey multiple times.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am, for your question. Pranav, sir, I hope your audio is clear now.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, loud, clear. Please. go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you. No, it's good, very good innovation, and especially I must say that with Perfios' success with your other major product, this is a great cross sell, right? You have go-to market figured out. If so that's really good. I have two questions. One, with this generative AI, and now it's will be more and more possible to do audio fakes, video fakes of customers and individuals, right? And obviously, it's coming. So is that something in your fraud sort of detection you are already thinking hard about and trying to get ahead of the problem? You had some color on that, and then I have one more follow-up.
I think ahead of the problem is relative, everybody. I mean, fraudsters are also trying to get ahead of us.
Yes,
But
yes.
let me just quickly address that, given the paucity of time, right? Yes, we are looking at it. And there's some amount of research that's happening in that space. For instance, with generative AI, some of the low quality generations will have a lip sync error, which essentially means the time that the lips move versus the audio stream is differentiated. The second thing is you see disproportionate high level of consistency on sort of the way the face looks, right? So if you look at the edges of anybody's face, there is a difference in coloration that happens basis the light flow on the individual. So that difference in coloration is far too consistent, and the shading change is far too consistent for a generative AI solution. So we are doing research in the area. Do we have a solution today? No. Is that on our roadmap? The answer is yes.
Excellent. And second, just from a sort of landscape perspective, is this particular solution you have developed comparable to something like Hunter from Experian, or is it very different?
So Hunter is on a file that gets logged in. We are not constrained by financial services. Theoretically, right, there is a cost to an e-commerce person onboarding and sending COD deliveries to someone who's non-existent, because those get returned. So we can get used in e-commerce, we can get used in gaming, we can get used in a far larger target set of industries.
Okay. Thanks and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juros, for your questions. Team Perfios, we wish you the best with the innovations. Thank you for answering the questions here. Thank